start this recording. There we go. Okay. I'll also post these notes on Moodle, right? So everything that I write down will be posted on Moodle. And then, so the recording will be my voice and the screen, okay? So sometimes, just a few times, it can get a little tricky because I'll be over here and say, oh, well, this one went over here, blah, blah, blah. It's hard if you haven't seen it, but you can probably figure it out, or even if you can't, then you can just ask me, okay? Which brings me to, how are you gonna find me? Where are you gonna hunt me down? So my office is downstairs in C104. It's a shared office, but I'm right in front of the window, so you'll see me. Okay, what's boring about working on the iPad is I end up sitting down here. Hey. So, but I've tried writing on those, and I don't even see one in here. And I just can't. I get carpal tunnel right away. Oh, there it is. No, it's too slanted. So, and that's no way to start the term, not being able to write. So, all right, what was I gonna do? Oh yeah, so I'm Emily. See if I can, don't worry, my writing is just terrible, and it will be terrible all term. You'll get used to it though on the plus side. So, and it will improve. It's just, I haven't been writing for, well, as long as you haven't been writing. I hope you weren't writing over the break. No, that's no way to live. So I'm in C104. And of course, I've got the usual setup for the email, but I'll just put it on here. ely@okanagan.bc.ca. Okay. However you want to contact me is fine. I am going to give you my cell phone. That's actually how I would prefer that you contact me, because it feels more urgent. So if it's not urgent, then fine, send an email, whatever. But if you're working on something and you have a question, then what I find is easier if you usually just text me a picture of it and say, hey, what am I doing wrong here, right? And then usually what I can do is I can just work it out, send you a picture back, and then it'll be a little bit faster that way, okay? So my cell phone, 250-864-8386. So, I don't know, probably store that away somewhere. But yeah, so email, come see me in my office. You can text me. Calling is a little bit weird. So you can call me, but I'll probably not answer. Wait for you to leave a message or text me. No, I'm normal. I'm like the rest of you. So, unless I know who it is. So I shouldn't have to say it, but maybe the first time that you text me, let me know who it is. So I don't have to be like, who it is? Because I will. Okay. I'll be able to figure out what class it is, but beyond that, I'll have no clue. Okay, so another kind of fun thing that we'll do, or that I do, is you can join class remotely. So I think, as you saw, we were here, and this is just kind of like a Skype meeting room, and that's what I use to record it. And so if it's snowing like crazy, like today, and it's Monday morning, I'm impressed you guys all made it. It wasn't snowing that bad when I left though, but now it's pretty bad. So for example, on a morning like today, you decide, no, I'm not going to go to school for whatever reason, you can still join in class. So you don't have to wait for the recording. You can join in. And so I've got this Zoom room set up. And I saw this and I had to use it. I knew there would be a place. So the Zoom room ID is just my cell phone number. Okay. And so if you go to Zoom, I think it forces you to download the app, I guess. Okay. But you shouldn't have to sign up for an account. You should just be able to plug in the Zoom room ID. Okay. And so I'll put that on our little summary list here. Okay. So I'll say join class remotely. Using Zoom. A little glitchy there. And our Zoom ID, or can't exactly remember what it's called, but is just my cell phone number, 250-864-8386. So I do get a notification if someone is in my Zoom room, sends me an email. But if we're not in class, then I'll just ignore it. Okay. It is also an option for if you have questions and you want to kind of talk, then I can show you my screen like we're doing here. Then you can say, hey, can we meet in Zoom? Sure thing. No one's wanted to do that, so I'm still waiting for the day, but I'll be ready. So the Zoom room is always available. I guess you guys could meet in there. I don't really see why you would, but I don't know, try it. No, I don't know. But yeah, so maybe after class, just kind of fiddle around with it. Make sure that you can get logged in, because I do know that you have to download something, but you can just do it on your phone. So that's pretty good. Okay. All right. So we've talked about Zoom. We've talked about everything else. No, not everything else. So, oh yeah, what do we think about the new Moodle? What changed? I'll show you guys around. It's pretty self-explanatory. I did kind of add some things, hide some things, because I'm not ready. But so up here, what I'll do is I'll put things like the test dates and the test weights and just kind of the grade scheme for the whole course up here. So you'll have that. Don't know why I didn't do that yesterday, but anyways, whatever. I posted the link to the lecture videos on YouTube. It just takes you to, oh, not that one, this one. To my channel. And then I think, I don't know, like I said, you guys will be able to navigate this way better than I ever can. I just know how to upload things, and I upload and I upload and I upload. Okay? So it takes a little bit of time after class, not that much time, but then they'll be available here. Okay? So I just keep pushing them out. Okay? If it's the following day and it seems like I forgot to post the video, then maybe just remind me. Okay. All right. Any questions so far? Oh. So there's a lot of weird stuff going on here, but I do think it's pretty fun. Oh, my pet peeve with Moodle is that I have no easy way to ping all of you at the same time. So I do use the announcements here, and what I'll do after class is I'll send out kind of a test one. So make sure that those announcements, so your Moodle messages are going to probably your personal email, right? So it goes to that weird Moodle email, but if you haven't linked it to your personal email, so it just forwards it to your personal email yet, then you should probably do that, because if for whatever reason, you know, I have to cancel class or whatever, not that I ever do, but anyways, oh, what? I should have left you on the hook there. No, but for whatever reason, I'm stuck, I can't make it, whatever. That's how I'm gonna have to get a hold of you guys. Okay, so I'll send out a test one later today, and then I'll make sure that everyone got it on Wednesday, and if you didn't, then go talk to IT, because I don't actually know how it works. Yeah. So we talked about the textbook. Okay. What's kind of fun about this little guy is if you learn all of this, and it's not that bad, you'll know everything from this course. So that's pretty good. Okay. So I don't know, seems conquerable, right? So anyways, so I think that's pretty fun. So everything that's in here we'll go through. I think I'm only showing the week one because that's the one that I spent some time on yesterday. But what I need you to do is, for each class, you need to do the pre-reading, at least skim through it. Because the problem with this course, I guess now, is there's so much material that we have to get through. I know, I just said it was conquerable, and it is, but as you might have noticed, I'm a bit of a chatty Cathy, and so for me, I want to talk about every little thing, and so what I want to be able to do is just assume that you've read it once, so this is not the first time that you're hearing everything. Okay, obviously today is different. We're here, we're talking. I know, I really set myself up for failure saying that we would get through all of chapter 1. That's probably not going to happen. Luckily, section 2.1 is itty bitty, so, right. So what I want you to do for next day is read chapter 1 and 2.1, okay? And we'll just kind of fight our way through here. So every day I'll tell you what you need to have read, okay? And if you haven't read it, then that's for you to feel bad about. Okay. So, any questions about the lecture portion so far? So I'm going to talk about the labs. I've had a few people email me and say, hey, so the labs are on Fridays, and it's my only thing on Fridays, or whatever. I know. I actually tried to move them to Monday or Tuesday, but they said no. So, because I don't want it on Fridays either. No one shows up for labs. I shouldn't have told you that either. Giving away all my secrets. No, so for the lab, how I want you to think about the lab is you're going to work through it before the lab time. Okay? You've got a little bit of time before Friday. We are going to have a lab on Friday. Usually there's no labs in the first week of classes, but because you're all mine, we can do whatever we want. I decided that we want the Friday before reading break off instead. So I shifted that no labs first week to the Friday before reading break, okay? For all of those who just want to be free and easy for reading break. Okay? So that's what I did. Hopefully everyone's okay with that and ready to start with labs. So the labs, we're going to be working in Excel. Okay? I guess I should write this down. which is pretty fun because Excel is familiar to most people. At least you know you don't like it. That's pretty good. That's good enough for me. Okay. And so for the labs will be done using Excel. Okay. And you guys know that you get a free Office 365 subscription, right? Okay. And so get Office. I actually can't remember if it's 365 or 360. I feel like both work, but I think it's 365. Get Office 365 for free through the college. Oops. I'll add IT, college IT, because I did it once for mine, but now I can't remember. There's a code and you go in, I don't know. You probably got it set up, so. But if you don't, then just know that you do get Office for free through the college, and so that's really good. And so, so we will be using Excel, which is a lot, I'd say, easier than R, which is what we were using briefly. And so you dodged a bullet there. Anyways, so we will be using Excel. What you'll have on Moodle, I'll take you back there, is I've posted the Lab 1 folder already. Okay. So there's all this information, blah, 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 show up on time, save your files, make folders, blah, blah, blah. And so for Lab 1, there's the instructions. Okay. So on your own, so this is what my ideal situation, on your own, you're gonna read through the instructions, try as much as you can of the lab, and then for the actual lab time, that's designated time that you come with your questions and I can help you finish the lab. Okay? So if you read these instructions, everything is fine, you're able to do it all, and how you'll know is because, well, okay. But anyways, since you're all on, you've got 2 data sets that you're going to be working with. I also posted the lab outlines. They're exactly the same, except one's from 8 to 9 and one's from 9 to 10. Doesn't matter. So you can look there if you want. You're welcome to come to either of those lab times or both if you want. I'll be there. Okay. Let's see here. How you'll know if you mastered the lab is if you're able to do the lab assignment, which is just going to be a Moodle quiz. And so if you're able to do the Moodle quiz, then you did it. And you don't need to come to lab because you did it. Okay? And so for those people who absolutely cannot come on Fridays, then yeah, of course, you can ask me questions about the lab outside of the lab times, but those 2 hours are just designated time for me to help you with your lab and to kind of get good understanding of the Excel labs. Okay? So use it as a help session where you've worked through it beforehand. Okay. Okay. Well, it goes on to something there. Something I remembered. Anyways, it'll come back to me. So on here, I'll fill it out. I just wanted to have one thing on there as we started. Okay. I did put our course outline. I did not print it because I'm pretty sure it's 5 pages that you'll never read. but the important information I will post at the top of the Moodle page. Okay, so things that we care about usually, well, my contact information, we talked about that. I picked office hours are after this class, 10 to 12, Mondays and Wednesdays. I am here basically all the time. So if I'm in my office, then you're more than welcome to just stop by and see me. So you don't have to stop by or make an appointment or anything. If I'm not there, then yeah, just text me or email me and be like, hey, can we set up a time to meet? Then sure, yeah. But usually I'm here almost all the time. So I guess my weird thing is my husband lives in Ottawa. And so I'm here, he's there, and he's with the military. So he got posted to Ottawa. And so here we are doing this weird long distance thing. So that's why I'm here almost all the time. Unless I'm in Ottawa, then obviously I'm not here. So that can be a thing. But this term I teach every day. I was just as bummed about the Fridays as you were. But that's all right. And so I'm here pretty much all the time. Okay. Oh, I'll remember. So I put the textbook on there, but I've shown it to you and I find that that's a little bit more helpful. So it's this one. Hopefully they didn't change the cover of it, but it is just whatever one the bookstore is selling that's called Elementary and Business Statistics. It is the same course. But no, they are same course. A run through of what we'll be covering, which we'll work through this in this order, but we won't talk about it now. Learning outcomes are probably more useful for me than for you, especially at the beginning of the course, but more at the end of the course. Then you can read through all these and say, I know how to do all those things, right? Some of them are a little bit lofty, right? But especially if you're thinking about things that you want to steal for your resume, for example, right? Because sometimes saying, oh, I took a statistics course, that's pretty broad and no one really cares, right? But if you say things like, oh, I took a statistics course where I was introduced to forecasting and interpreting time series data, for example, right? So you can do that for all your courses. Use the learning outcomes as things that you have actually learned, because that's our job, is to teach you all those learning outcomes. So, life hack? No? You're right. I don't really know what a life hack is. But no. But I'm not sure if it was. Anyways. All right. So looks like I'm missing a space there, but that's okay. So your grade in this course comes from a lot of different places, because we've got the lab, we've got the lecture, and so those lab exercises, quizzes, activities, whatever you want to call them, they're all the same. Those are those Moodle quizzes that you're doing at the end of each lab. Okay? Those will make up 10% of your grade. So pretty reasonable chunk, right? Especially because you get to sit down and you can work on it together and you can kind of work through it. You can ask me questions, right? And so, so those will be 10% of your grade. I'll close them at midnight the following Friday, right? So you'll have a week to do them. Okay. So those Moodle quizzes, hard deadline. I know. Cruel. There's a lab exam. It's a little bit misleading. The only reason we had to call it a lab exam is because it's going to be held in the lab time. Okay? How I want you to think about the lab exam is it's essentially the short answer multiple choice section of the final exam. Okay? It'll be things like and it'll be multiple choice, right? So it'll be things like definitions, things like, oh, if you have this Excel output, what's going on here, right? Interpret this output. So you will not need to do any Excel for the lab exam. It'll be a printout, and I think it's 30 or so multiple choice questions, and it's essentially just the short answer of the final exam. Okay? But to make room for all the things that we need to cover on the final exam, that's what we had to do. Then there's assignments and / quizzes. I'll probably just do assignments. I don't really like popping quizzes on you guys, especially because I don't really care if you come to class. I guess that's what I wanted to talk about too. I love having everyone here. It's really fun. It just makes for, I don't know, a nicer experience. But I completely understand that, I mean, life happens. You have other courses going on. If you make the decision to not come to class, I don't actually care. I care because I want you to learn this material, but you have all the resources that you need to learn this material, right? I give you the videos, I give you the notes, you have the textbook, you've got assignments to work through, right? So you have all those resources, and so it kind of puts the onus on you, right? It's more your problem learning the material, right? I'll be here, I'll chat away, blah, 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 blah. But as far as coming to class goes, no, it sounds so harsh when I say I don't care what you do. But it's none of my business if you decide to come to class or not. Okay? I do care if you're learning the material or not. Okay? And I'll know by the quizzes and by the tests. Okay? And so we do have assignments, and they're going to be worth another 10% in your grade. So those will be hand-in assignments. Probably, although Steve's going to show me some fun online questions, so maybe we'll do something like that, a little mix. But a lot of stats is, I need to know what your thinking is, right? And so I like to do a mix of hand-in and online in that case. So there's going to be 2 tests, and I'll finish mapping out the course exactly today, and then I'll tell you the test dates on Wednesday, okay? February, March, sometime. Okay? The first test is going to be worth 15%, and then the second test is worth 20%. Okay? So for a total of 35% of your grade. And then we've got the final exam, which is going to be 35% of your grade. Slightly lower than the usual 40 for a math course, but it's because we've got that lab exam. So we've actually got essentially a 45% final, right? But we split it up. Okay. Oh, any questions so far? Okay. I had something. And I said, no, I'll remember that. Anyways. One thing that I will say now, and I will remind you closer to the final exam, but you will need at least 45% on the final exam in order to be able to pass the course. I think that's more than reasonable. Should you be able to spew out 45% of the course in a 3-hour sit down in order to pass the course? Yeah. And I think you can do it. I know you can do it. So I'm not worried about that, but I do want to say that because that's kind of the most glitchy part, I think. Some important dates, they're always on these things, but the last day to register for a class, so drop, register, whatever, is January 17th. And then I feel like the last day to withdraw with a W is so late. March 6th? That's like crazy late. You still get a W. But after that, if you're failing, you get an F. But those are the majors, right? You guys know we have a week off in February, right? Everyone's got it in their planner. Reading break! Big plans. But other than that, there's no time off. Easter is just messing with our final exam schedule this year. Anyways, all right. Oh, and another thing I wanted to say was for tests, I do not offer any makeup tests. So if you miss a test for whatever reason, I'll just shift that weight to the final exam, okay? If you miss test 1, for example, that 15% weight is gonna get shifted to the final exam. So now your final exam is worth 35 plus 15. Who knows, right? Well, I joke, but actually math is not my strong suit. I do have a degree in math, but I do not do math in my head, and I'm not ashamed of it. There was a time in my undergrad, so working on math problems all the time, math, and I caught myself doing 1 + 1 on the calculator, and I thought, oh man, I'm in trouble, just to make sure that that's what it was. So anyways, so I don't do math in my head. I've been ruined, I've been spoiled. But anyways. But I do math. Weird, right? All right. So let me take you back. I feel like there's more I wanted to say here. We did the course outline. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. Back to here. Okay. So we will talk more about, well, especially the lab exam, because I do think it's different from other courses where we've kind of split up that last little bit. But there are 8 labs that we have to work through. Okay. There's 13 weeks of classes. And so we do have a little bit of wiggle room. Okay. For example, I moved the no classes on the last day to be in front of the reading break. Okay. And so I'll make a note of that here. That will be different from the Stat 124 labs. Besides that, those labs will be the same, but because I'm doing that switcheroo, they'll be a week ahead of us. They'll be a week behind us. We'll be a week ahead. Anyways, it'll sort itself out after reading break. Okay. And so we will do lab 1. Oops. Lab 1 this week. But no labs the week before reading break. That much I decided. Okay. There's a little bit, there's 2 of the last labs, we won't have covered all the material that we need to do them. And so there might be kind of a spare week there where we won't have a lab, but I'll let you guys know and I'll post it. It'll be in the Moodle week by week, okay? And so I'll let you guys know, but essentially what I'm planning on doing is just kind of getting the lab portion done as soon as we can. Okay, so besides the kind of mix up there where, oh, we haven't talked about that in class yet. We could, but anyways, so that's how it's looking right now. But once it's finalized, I'll post it on Moodle. Okay. All right. that's the one that I wanted to talk about. All right. We were supposed to get through chapter 1 today. Here we go. Any questions though before we actually start? You guys might not even know what stats is yet. No? Some do. Yeah. It is. Yeah. Yeah, so it'll be the whole entire course. Yeah. Yeah. And we will have 1 or even 2 days of review before the final exam. So for that, I do like to give a pretty hearty outline of what to expect for the final, right? You will have seen almost all of those types of questions before, right? And so you will be prepared, but it's just nice to kind of go into the final exam sort of knowing what's going on, right? What's going to be on there, right? So I do that. So you will have a pretty good idea of what it's going to look like. And there will be practice finals. But yeah. Okay. One bummer is because we've got a lot of material going on, I won't be able to do a review class before the tests. So typically I do a review class, and maybe that's more for me. Review before the tests. I will give you a practice test, right, for you to work through. Usually in the review class, I just work through it with you guys, but we won't have time to do that. Right? Thought it was more important to do complete reviews before the final exam. Okay, so yeah, that's one weird thing for me. So what happened was, because the college wants this course to be available to business students as well, right? Then we have to satisfy the business accreditation, but also the arts accreditation because it's an arts course, right? Stat 121 is elementary statistics, so it's in the arts department. So now we've got these two kind of bosses saying, well, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. Okay, fine, sure, reasonable course. Well, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. Also a reasonable course. And now here we are, right? So, so for that reason, that's why you have to do the pre-reading. So when I say things, it's not the first time that you're hearing it. Okay? Except for chapter 1. Chapter 1's pretty fun. And I'll just kind of walk you through it, and we'll do as much as we can. How about? All right, but before we start, well, you can ask questions whenever. But any questions? No questions. My goodness. Hopefully I said it all. I don't know. All right. So we'll start with chapter 1. And like I said, we'll see how far we get. All right. What is statistics? That's usually a good place to start. Okay. Statistics. So I did my undergrad in math, but then I did my master's in stats. And so whenever I told people that, oh, I'm working on my master's, everyone was like, oh, great. What are you doing it in? Stats. Oh, so do you know like all the sports teams and stuff? Or like, no, no, I do not. So it's not that kind of stats, right? So stats is this huge field. And I think now we kind of know a little bit more about stats, especially with things like data science and big data popping up. So now we know a little bit more, but stats is kind of this 3-phase thing, right? So it's the collection of data, right? That's stats. The analysis of data, that's also stats. And then just being able to draw conclusions or infer things from data, right? That's also stats. Okay? And so statistics is the collection of data the analysis of data, right? And drawing conclusions from data. I guess you draw conclusions from the analysis bit. It's kind of this three-phase thing. And drawing conclusions from data. And then I'll put in brackets the analysis, of course, right? So all of these three things, well, the first one especially is its own field, right? Being able to collect data properly and just kind of setting up things like experiments. So experimental design is its a whole entire field. And just kind of data collection on its own is a huge field, okay? So we'll just talk briefly about data collection. We're not going to get into anything nitty-gritty. Then we move into analyzing the data, right? So, okay, well, what is happening in this data, kind of face value? How do we summarize data? And then we say, okay, well, I have this research idea or this research hypothesis that I'm going to look at. And so now, what does my analysis tell me about my hypothesis, right? My research idea. Okay? So it's this kind of, we collect data, we analyze the data, and then we're able to draw conclusions about some population. Okay? Chapter 1 is a lot of just vocabulary, a lot of things that we'll probably only see on test 1 and probably the lab exam, right? Which isn't really a lab exam. Yeah? And so they're just things that I need you to know, because otherwise we can't talk about data. Okay? So data consists of variables. Okay? Data consists of variables. Okay. So the first thing that we need to learn is being able to talk about variables, right? In the same way that if I ask you what shape this is, well, that wasn't a very good example. You would say probably a square, or depending on how picky you are, maybe a rectangle, right? Or what shape is this, right? So just how we had to learn what those things are, we also need to have a really good handle on what type of variables we have to deal with. Okay, I'm not going to keep those on there. And I'm going to scoot this down. You probably can't see it, but I've got these page breaks. So when I post it on Moodle, so it'll just be a PDF. And sometimes if I don't mind the page breaks, it's going to be all split up across the pages. So that's more my problem than your problem. But it's going to be a thing. All right. So a variable, I'm going to do a little tree diagram here. Okay, so a variable at its core is just anything that you have collected. Okay? And there are only two types of variables at its core. Okay? A variable can either be numerical or categorical, right? It'll either be a number or some sort of category, okay? And that's it. So it can either be numerical or categorical. Okay. Even people who have done stats for a long time, or at least dealt with stats, read stats. So I used to work for a market research firm in Victoria. And so, you know, they're crunching out research papers all the time, collecting data, analyzing data, interpreting data. So even people who should be pretty well versed in how to properly analyze something had a hard time with the difference between numerical and categorical data. That's not to say that it's hard, it's just easy to forget, okay? Because the reason that it's important to know what a numerical variable is and what a categorical variable is hey, so handy. I hope this does not leave this room. Can't wait to use it. Maybe that's why this thing is so creaky. Well, it's just slapping it. How we analyze a numerical variable is going to be very different from how we analyze a categorical variable, right? So a categorical variable, for example, would be something like hair color, right? Everyone in this room has a hair color. We could set up predetermined categories and try to fit everyone into those categories, right? But because we've got categories to deal with, it's a categorical variable, right? If we're talking about something that ironically can be measured, you have a numerical variable, right? Tricky part is just because you've got a number that you're dealing with doesn't mean that it's numerical, right? And we'll talk more about that later on, right? But for now, if you have a number, if you have a measurement, right, you've got a numerical variable. My go-to thing is, if it makes sense to talk about the average of something, it's numerical. Yeah? So height is a measurement, right? So we know it's numerical, but also we can talk about the average height in this room and it would make sense, right? And so let's say, I'll use a different color just because it's a little bit off track here. But if it makes sense to talk about the average, oops, that doesn't say average. The average of a variable it is numerical. Categorical is easier to grasp, right? But if we've got categories, then it's categorical, right? Then we run into problems like, if I asked you what year you're in, first year, second year, third year, fourth year, right? What would that be? Fifth year, victory lap. No. No one does a victory lap at college. No, people do. I did a victory lap. 5 years. I just think it's funny to imagine someone running around the track. Victory lap. Anyways, so first year, second year, third year, fourth year, right? I would say those are categories, right? Because we would want to know how many people are in first year, right? How many people are in second year, how many people are in third year, and how many people are in fourth year. It doesn't really make sense to talk about the average year that we're in. We could, and that's why it's one of those. So that's why I say sometimes it's a little bit tricky, okay? We could talk about the average year, but I would argue that no, I would want to know how many are in each of these categories would be more informative, okay? I know, to start the term off vague, whatever you argue is fine by me, okay? And so if you're gonna tell me that something is numerical, then you better argue that knowing the average is more informative than knowing how many are in each category, right? And so a lot of this stuff is gonna be you arguing your case. And there, in this case with the first year, second year, third year, fourth year, there's actually, I would say there is no truly right answer because I could argue it either way. Like I said, I would argue that it's categorical because for me, that's more informative, knowing that, you know, there's 20 people in this room who are in first year and so on and so forth. But as long as you're arguing your case, you did it. And I know that's hard to tackle, especially if you're heading into this course thinking it's going to be purely math, right? There's going to be a tiny bit of math, but the math in this course is not hard, okay? It's going to be the interpretation of that math that's going to be a little bit tricky. And there's going to be numbers and things, but as far as the actual math goes, no, it's not hard. Okay? And that's what throws a lot of people for a loop because they head into this course thinking, oh, I'm just going to, you know, math all day. Not quite. It's not math. It's stats, right? And so it is a lot of interpretation, arguing your case, and kind of knowing what your argument should be, right? And so at its core, right, a variable, so anything that you've collected is going to be classified as either numerical or categorical. And there will be times where you'll have to kind of make a judgment call and say, I'm going to consider this variable to be this, right, categorical, for example, because I find it more informative, right? That would be your backup plan. To make matters worse, different fields have different names for these things. So numerical variables, so I'm going to stick to calling them numerical and categorical, but if you pick up a different textbook, numerical variables can also be called quantitative, so a quantity variable. Do it in green. Numerical can also be called quantitative. Quantitative. I don't do math, I can't spell. What can I do? Just blab. I can do stats. And a categorical variable can also be called qualitative, right? So quantity, quality, quantitative, qualitative. So part of my job here is just to introduce you to all these different things, but make sure that you know that they're all the same. So when you read a different textbook or a different research paper, just be aware that if you see quantitative, you might have to think about it for a second, but you know what that is, right? You know that it's a numerical variable, and by the end of this course, you'll know how that should be analyzed, right? And so categorical can also be called qualitative. 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 we're only going to take it one step further. Now, all these variables, depending on, I feel like psychology especially loves to break down the variables. They've got like another 3 layers to go after this. So you'll see what I mean in a second. But a numerical variable for us in this course, we're just going to split it up into either it's continuous, meaning it's on a continuous measurement scale, things like speed, height, weight, right? The only reason that we can only measure down to, I don't know, a millimeter on this thing, right? That's not because nothing exists in between. That's because of we're restricted by this measurement device, right? If we had a more accurate device, we could go even deeper, right? We could have even more precision in there, right? And so that would be a continuous measurement. The other option is to have a discrete numerical variable. And so a discrete numerical variable would be things like age. Age is a number. It makes sense to talk about the average age in this room, right? But we don't, unless you know you're itty bitty, we don't really talk about how old you are in months or anything like that, right? Or even days or anything weird like that. We just talk, I can actually never remember how old I am. I feel like I'm 33. Anyways, somewhere around there. Once I hit, I was so excited to hit 30 that when I was like 27, I told people I was 30, and then I just kept telling people I was 30, but then I hit 30 and I was so excited. And then after 30, I just kept telling people I was 30. So now I'm like, I don't know, I'm past 30, I can tell you that much. 33, I think. Doesn't matter. But so, for example, for me, 30, 30, 30, those are all, no. Right, 27, 28, 29, those are discrete numbers, and we don't really care to measure anything in between. Right? We could, but we don't. Right? All right, so from the numerical, I'm going to do another tree here, make it not so long. And a numerical variable can either be continuous or discrete. So it's continuous if it's measured on a continuous scale, right? And so continuous is measured on a continuous scale. So the only thing holding us back for precision is our measuring device, right? Whereas a discrete variable is, we've just got these discrete, hopefully everyone knows the word discrete, right? From life, right? And so we've got these individual measurements. Okay. So measurements are individual. For example, age. Right. Yeah. Just briefly, so I will talk about how to analyze a continuous versus a discrete variable. They will behave the same way. They are numerical at their core, right? I'll just mention that there are more categories for categorical variables as well. We're not really going to talk about them or care about them because in this course, we don't really care so much about categorical variables. Okay. They're usually pretty boring. How many are in this category? How many are in this category? Well, you're done. Right. But just so that you've seen it, and even when you go to check the textbook, you'll see it's kind of grayed out, showing you that it's not very important at all. You can have a categorical variable that's nominal, or a categorical variable that's ordinal. Okay. Remember, these are categories. Okay. A nominal variable would mean that there's no order to these categories, so no natural ordering. No natural order to the categories. Right. Nominal has the word no in it. Right. And then the opposite of that, ordinal, would mean that there is natural ordering to the categories. Oh, ran out of room here. Has natural ordering. Going back to our example of what year you're in, right? There is natural ordering. First year, second year, third year, fourth year. That would be an ordinal variable. If we're talking about things like hair color, there is no natural order that kind of arises, right? And so then you would have a nominal variable. So like I said, it's just good to know that those exist. And like I also said, some fields, like, well, the only one I've stumbled upon that's so into all these layers is psychology. They love to break it up even further, even further, even further, and you can. But for us, this is where we'll stop. Okay, for these variables. All right. Any questions? Oh, okay. I do apologize, but I am going to have to use up the whole time. It's the first day, I know. But also because it's really fun. Okay, so we've got these variables, right? And how I want you to imagine it is usually you'll have some spreadsheet, right, where you've collected your data. So it's going to be in, the textbook calls it a data matrix, right? But a matrix is just kind of a spreadsheet type situation. And so you've got the spreadsheet. And so what I want you to imagine is that every column of information that you've collected is a variable. Right? And so each of those columns can be classified as either numerical or categorical, and then it can be further classified as continuous or discrete. And we're not going to talk about nominal or ordinal so much, right? But it could be. So data is usually collected in a spreadsheet. Is usually collected in a spreadsheet. Okay. And each column, besides the first one where we would say, this is individual number one's responses, individual number two's responses, number three's responses, right? We keep that for the first column. And like I said, we'll talk more about that. But data is usually collected in a spreadsheet where each column, right, so up and down, will be a variable. Okay. Where each column is a variable. Okay. So now we start on the road of collecting data What's that going to look like? Well, first of all, we're going to have some research question in mind, right? And so that research question is going to help us decide what our target population is, right? If I want to know what the average weight of newborns are or is, right, I wouldn't go to a daycare and collect their weights, right? Things like that, something silly like that makes sense, right? But sometimes it's not so obvious, right? But so our research question, your first thing you're going to do is you're going to figure out what your target population is, right? What is the population that I actually want to talk about, right? If my research question is about the average weight of newborns, I should probably head down to the hospital and collect that data, right, of newborns, because that would be my target population, right? I'm not going to go to the daycare and, well, maybe that was in a roundabout way, you could say how much did this baby weigh when it was born, but you should probably collect it from newborns, right? Things like that. And so once we have established a research question, once we have established a research question, we should identify the target population. We should identify the target population. Because we usually, and this most of the time, we will not be able to collect information on the whole population, right? That leads us to, well, then we can take a sample of that population, right? And so a lot of that data collection comes down to, how do I collect a sample that's going to be representative of my target population, right? Because I just want my sample to be a little mini version of my population, right, that I'm interested in. And so once we have established a research question, we should identify the target population. From the target population, we will collect a sample. From the target population, we will collect a sample that is representative of the target population. That is representative of the target population. And I'm going to scoot this down. Okay. So the easiest way to have a sample that's representative of the population is to collect a random sample. Okay? And so at the end of the day, whatever sampling we do should be random, because that's the only way that we can ensure that we've got this representative sample. Okay? And so the best way to ensure our sample is representative of the population, the best way to ensure our sample is representative of the population is to collect our sample randomly. Randomly selecting a sample is gonna help us avoid introducing bias into our sample, right? And so we want to avoid having a biased sample, right? Things that, oh, well, this person would answer the exact same way that I want them to, right? We can't be doing that. That would be introducing bias. And so collecting our sample randomly helps ensure, I said ensure already, how about helps in eliminating no, sorry, helps us avoid introducing bias into our sample. Okay. So a biased sample is a bad sample, right? Because it's not going to be representative of our population. So a biased sample is a bad sample because it will not be representative of the population. It will not be representative of the population. I stopped saying target population because now it's understood that, of course, our sample should be representative of the target population, right? And so now when I talk about sample and population, right, of course, they should be from the same things, okay? All right, I think that's a pretty good introduction. And so make sure you get the textbook, read chapter 1 and 2.1, see how we do. See you guys on Wednesday. I forgot to say, you will need a calculator, but any calculator will work. So you're all good. All right. Bring your name tags for next day. I did not learn very many names today.